Coming up next on Texas Two Wheelin'. We're hitting the road and heading down to Glen Rose for a look at the historic town square and a history lesson at Bernard's Mill. Plus, off the main square of Glen Rose, the studio of celebrated sculptor and painter Robert Summers. Hear about the amazing sculptures and paintings created by this living legend. Also, visit Hyco and learn about one of the great mysteries of the American West, Billy the Kid. This infamous man, reputed to be one of the worst outlaws sworn dead and buried since 1881, has survived till 1950. Or is it the biggest hoax in Lone Star history? And later, meet Taylor Simpson, 12 years old and a national finalist in barrel racing. Visit the family restaurant her mom and dad built, themed after her success, tucked away at Tres Rios, offering a great variety of American foods. All coming up next on Texas Two Wheelin'.
I've traveled every road in this here land. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. I've crossed the deserts bare, man. Breathe the mountain air, man. Travel, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere. I've been to Waco, Hyco, Hondo, Navasota, Winsburg, Jacksboro, Hillsboro, Santa Rosa, Austin, Houston, Galveston, Texarkana, Frisco, Buffalo, Conroe, Corsicana, Goliad, Groesbeck, Glen Rose, Red Oak, Post Oak, Live Oak, Lone Oak, no joke. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. I've crossed the deserts bare, man. Breathe the mountain air, man. Wind blowing in my hair, man. I've been everywhere. Yeah, when it comes to traveling, Texas friends, I've been everywhere. Woo-hoo!
Hi, I'm Jody Dean.
And I'm Jim Cockrell. Welcome to Texas Two Wheelin'.
We're in Glen Rose, Texas, a beautiful part of the Lone Star State known for historic towns like Iredale and Hyco. That's absolutely gorgeous if you like traveling the back roads on two wheels.
I'll tell you, Jody, this is just a beautiful area down here, especially from the saddle of a motorcycle. And I heard you use the word historic. That certainly describes the area around Glen Rose, from the 200-million-year-old dinosaur tracks in the Paluxy River, which has some of the best preserved dinosaur tracks found anywhere in the continental United States, to the downtown area that reminds you of one of those picture postcards reminiscent of the 19th century Texas.
The courthouse square, much like the courthouse building, is modest in size. The limestone courthouse is typical of early Texas, constructed in 1894 by John Cormack. The Somerville County Courthouse is a simple two-story structure featuring elements of Romanesque revival and General Grant architectural styles, recognized as a Texas historic landmark way back in 1963.
And this bronze statue by nationally renowned artist Robert Summers depicts an event that is legendary in these parts: the rescue of a woman by the name of Juana Cavazos, who had been taken captive in South Texas by the Comanches, and her rescuer, Charles Bernard, turned out to be one of the eventual founders of Glen Rose. In fact, Charles and Juana were later married.
Just down the road a bit is Bernard's Mill Museum. The native limestone flour and grist mill built by Bernard in 1860 still stands on the banks of the Paluxy River just west of the town square. The mill was the first building in Glen Rose and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. This museum features 12 rooms filled with over 200 original works of art, including oil paintings, etchings, artifacts, watercolors, and bronzes.
You know, Jody, Taylor and I rode our motorcycles down here a couple of days ago with our producer, Alan Oliver, and we got a little preview
of what we're going to experience on our ride today.
Most people think Chalk Mountain is just a wide spot in the road, but there is a cemetery that tells the story of Civil War veterans and Texas Rangers who helped settle this area. And we're going to ride on down to Hyco, where many people believe the real Billy the Kid died of a heart attack in 1950, as opposed to being shot and killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett in Fort Sumner, New Mexico in 1887.
Well, brother, I cannot wait. Why are we sitting here?
I don't know, man. Let's get on it.
Let's get rolling. Any visit to Glen Rose should start here on the town square. Glen Rose's downtown area is home to dozens of quaint shops where you can prowl through nooks and cubby holes to find antique goods or sit a spell and sip a cappuccino.
So like the apple cobbler, is that your recipe or is that like your grandmother's recipe? Really? Oh. There's a lot of love in these jars. It takes a lot of time to do this.
A lot of love and a lot of hate.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And that is the best barbecue sauce I've ever tasted in my life.
Our oldest son's recipe.
Is it really?
Ooh, I can't wait to go home and put it on some brisket. Just off the square is the city park with huge boulders perched on the banks of the Paluxy River. On any given day, one can see locals and tourists alike crawling over and around these reminders of what the landscape might have looked like millions of years ago, when the dinosaurs were the dominant life forms around here.
Today, dropping a hook in the Paluxy could result in a tasty dinner this evening, or it may just be a way to retreat inside your own thoughts as you while away the time in beautiful surroundings.
Now, both Jim and I are history nuts, and he has obviously passed that trait along to his son. So much so that he and Taylor simply can't resist the occasional stop to look around and in some of the old dilapidated structures. If walls could talk, there are buildings, or remnants of buildings, in Glen Rose that could no doubt keep us spellbound with the history they've seen. Glen Rose has no shortage of vintage lodging, from the dozens of bed and breakfast establishments to the Glen Rose Hotel, which was established in 1928. That's been meticulously maintained ever since, with furnishings of that era.
Only a few blocks off the main square in Glen Rose is the studio of celebrated sculptor and painter Robert Summers. Residing in his boyhood hometown, Robert began creating figures and animals with bread dough at the age of 2. He was painting and doing pencil sketches by the time he was old enough to go to school, and graduating to oil painting by the age of 9.
My mother told a story, and I can't vouch for this. She used to, at every art show, she would tell, well, how long has your son been doing this? Since he was 2.5. And she would stick with it. And I said, I can't vouch for this, but she said I would sit at the table and pull center out of bread and roll it up, make it into dough, and fashion little animals when I was 2.5.
Oh my goodness.
And I can't vouch for that, but I do remember when I was 4.5, 5, and I remember doing watercolors.
His art is a magnificent reflection of his love for wildlife and the cowboy spirit, as you can see in some of these smaller versions of his masterful sculptures at the Bernard's Mill Museum. Welcome to the Robert Summers Studios. Robert Summers is a nationally known sculptor of monuments of epic dimensions. He also sculpts smaller bronzes. Robert is also a very well-known painter of Western, Civil War, and other subjects. If you're looking for someone to create a stunning major monument, such as the John Wayne at the Orange County Airport, or are looking for some smaller bronze sculptures or paintings or prints from one of the best-known and highly celebrated artists of our time, meet Bob Summers.
I've done almost every type of subject matter, but by and large, since I began painting seriously and professionally, it's been mostly in the Western designer. Not necessarily just cowboys or cowboys and Indians type, but I'm talking about Western landscape, the Southwestern flavor, let's put it that way. A lot of my old schoolmates said, I can't believe you've gotten to be such a historian, since that was your worst subject at school. And it was, I wasn't interested in history in school, but it soon became a big part of my life when I started trying to do authentic artwork for period pieces.
Bob invited us into his studio and sculpting warehouse to see what current pieces he was creating. As we entered the living room, there stood the original Tom Landry clay statue. It was amazing to see the actual piece that the bronze version that now stands at Texas Stadium today was made from.
Working with the Landry family, it was just a joy, and to getting to know them is it's part of the process to me. You have to get into a specific mindset, at least I do, and feel like I really know this person up close and personal before I can really do justice to the person. And most of these projects I've been involved with have been that way, and it's just been so neat to meet the family. It kind of makes you think you knew that person once you start knowing the family.
Yeah. As our tour continued, Bob shared some other interesting pieces of Billy the Kid and various pieces he has in the works.
The horse is shying back. Something has startled the kid, and he was stealing one of Chisholm's cows. The steer's, of course, unhappy and bawling, and he's been quick-tied, and so we don't know what's coming up, a posse or Chisholm's men or whatever, but again, it's for the viewer to decide.
Yeah.
But he's reaching for his sidearm. They wanted to do a cattle rustler, but they would kind of like it favoring Billy the Kid. They said they might not even put that on the legend.
At Bob's warehouse, he shared with us an incredible piece he is creating for Tulsa, Oklahoma. When finished, it will be an East meets West masterpiece. Government funds and grants are being provided to improve the national icon that winds through Tulsa, known as the Mother Road. Route 66 exists because of the efforts of Tulsan Cyrus Avery, who would not give up his vision for a highway across America. And today, Route 66 is considered a valuable piece of Americana and an international tourist draw. The piece that Bob is creating represents just that. The Cyrus Avery Centennial Plaza will house a larger-than-life sculpture of Cyrus Avery and his family in a Model T abruptly meeting up with a horse and buggy, a not-so-subtle metaphor representing old meets new. The plaza also sports an overlook to the Cyrus Avery Route 66 Memorial Bridge and will display flags from every state through which the highway passes.
It's going to be the centerpiece for a celebration of the 85th birthday of the letting of Route 66. Right there in Tulsa. That's where the final connection was made, right there over the Arkansas River. So it's an interesting project.
It was awesome to see Bob at work and his crew creating this piece. In his warehouse, a real Model T was being used as an example for the 135% scale version sitting directly next to it. Bob and I continued our conversation about his favorite piece of all time, the John Wayne statue.
That was such an honor to do that piece. When I was called, I just almost fell out of the chair. I mean, because there's a lot of sculptors around the world, and to be the one chosen was just, mind-boggling to me. And I worked on the small piece, the 30, I think it's 33 inches. I worked on that probably 3 or 4 months on the small one, and then once it was approved, then I started the large one, the 9.5 foot version, and I was really tickled to have the Duke's sons come in, Michael and Patrick, the two older boys. Came probably 6 or 7 times over the course of a year it took to do the piece, the large piece.
What Bob began to share with me next was unbelievable to me. Bob shared some rare home movies of the creation of the piece from start to finish. Also on the tape were some clips of Bob discussing with John Wayne's sons the statue. In addition, he had taped the actual ceremony of the unveiling. It was incredibly interesting to me to see these tapes and to hear about the relationship that Bob had formed with the Wayne family.
We developed a really neat friendship, and And they were so helpful in giving little insights as to the demeanor of their pop and everything. So I was really, it was a labor of love to do that project.
You have 4 major projects in the works right now?
Yes, I do. One for Waco, one for Artesia, New Mexico, one for Roswell, and of course the Tulsa piece we just mentioned. And actually there's a 5th one. It's not totally written in stone yet, but the Reagan piece. Actually, I was commissioned to do that, and it went through all of the various committees, including the late Michael Deaver, which was one of the last steps into the final approval, and then, of course, the final approval being Nancy Reagan, and she gave her approval on it. We had it set up and ready to start the mathematical procedure of enlarging, and September 11th, when the first planes hit the World Trade Center, and of course that basically killed the project at that time. Then I got word that it was off, and so I've gotten into these other pieces.
How do you put a price on something like that?
You know, it's probably the most difficult part of my job is trying to get a realistic figure and to where I can make money at it, of course, but that's not has never been my sole interest in life, is becoming rich and famous. I'm just thankful to the Lord that He's allowed me to do what I do and make a decent living at it. Bronze casting is a very expensive proposition. For instance, I think the Tulsa project has cost me close to $500,000 just to mold and cast it. Even though I can kind of anticipate a little bit of the timing involved, I never hit it right on. And a project of this nature, of the size we're talking about here, can easily extend 6 months. That's a bunch, you know. And so when it does, obviously my profit value starts going way down when that happens, because of the constant changing of and the price increases, and you can't anticipate that. You know, just like this, for instance, let me give you one illustration. The bronze pricing last year just went crazy. The Chinese market drove it up from $3.25 a pound to $4.69 a pound. Now, when you're buying 18 to 20,000 pounds at a time, it's significant.
It sure is.
And so that alone can jump a project up $30,000, $40,000 easy.
Well, best of luck to you.
Thank you
all
so
your
much,
endeavors.
Jim.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and thank you for coming out.
Our pleasure. You know what? It's time to hit the road and head south out of Glen Rose. On Highway 67, travelers can see some of the more spectacular views of the northern Texas hill country. About 12 miles down the road is Chalk Mountain. Now you'll have to watch carefully or you'll miss the left turn off Highway 67 that takes you to the Chalk Mountain Cemetery, which with over 350 graves probably serves as the best indicator of the history of the area and the people who lived and died here. There's a beautiful old chapel on the cemetery grounds.
Brothers and sisters, today our text will be taken from the Texas Motor Vehicle Code. Please turn to page 32. Page 32 of the Texas Motor. Wake up!
The land that Chalk Mountain Cemetery sits on used to belong to Hiram Berry Rogers, who donated this site to be used as a cemetery. Looking at gravestone inscriptions, it's easy to tell that life was hard in this part of Texas 125 years ago. People died young, and there are far too many headstones for children who died in the early years of their lives. The presence of unmarked graves, however, suggests that there may have been much earlier use of this cemetery.
Hiram Rogers joined Lieutenant Sul Ross's group of Texas Rangers as a young man in Waco. After helping find Cynthia Ann Parker, this group of Rangers joined the Confederacy and became part of General Hood's Texas Brigade. Rogers was at Appomattox when General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. With the dissolution of his regiment, Rogers returned to Waco, where he soon entered service with the state police under Texas Governor Polk. Hiram later came to Erath County and bought land at Chalk Mountain. Hiram Berry Rogers and his wife Nancy are buried here side by side. You know, when you come to a place like this, you can feel the presence of the people who are resting here. A Confederate marker was placed on old Hiram's grave. Later on, a Texas Rangers marker to honor this former Ranger.
You know, Roger's great-grandson is Pete Laney, who up until 2003 was our Speaker of the House of the Texas Legislature. Up next, we're going to head on down to Hyco, where we check in on a controversial story about Billy the Kid.
As we left Chalk Mountain to continue our journey, we noticed a few hundred yards south of where we turned back onto Highway 67, the remnants of what most travelers along this stretch of road think of as the community of Chalk Mountain. Originally established in the 1850s as a trading center, the settlement didn't actually become a town until the 1870s, when its post office first opened. Chalk Mountain grew to more than 80 inhabitants by the turn of the century, but by 1910, the population had dropped to less than 50. And today, the number of occupied residences could be counted on two hands, and you'd still have several fingers left. One of the most interesting of those residents is Arita Jackson, who runs a small gas station convenience store full of memories of yesterday, when full service was offered, and you could trust your car to the man who wears the star.
Howdy, ma'am. How are you doing? Oh, Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
Were you from here originally?
Yes.
Which town?
Which town? No town.
Just here?
This town.
No kidding. Where did you grow up?
I was born a couple of miles over here in the pasture. My brother, who was born over there at the same place, he's born in 1908. So they came here before 1908.
Really? So do you ever take a day off?
No,
You're open Sundays too?
part of Sunday.
Part of Sundays.
I take off and go to church, and then I stay here until people get their Sunday paper. Then I go to church, and then I come back and eat lunch and open up after lunch.
Do you still sell gas here?
I have one pump that's still working.
Really?
Sell a little bit.
How often do you get delivery?
Oh, about every 2 weeks.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right? I bet people are glad to see you.
Yeah. I think they'll miss me when I'm gone. They don't trade with me much now.
Of course, we saw Hiram Rogers and a lot of whole families up there. The Laneys and Rogers, and I saw the Jacksons
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah. My husband's grandfather and his daddy, now he's there.
You don't have a TV or a radio in here.
Yes, I have TV
Oh,
and
do you?
radio, both.
Really? So that keeps you company?
Yeah, and I read, I quilt. I did a quilt last week. I just finished it.
Oh my goodness, I bet it was gorgeous.
No, it's just made out of scraps. Just leftover scraps.
Well, those are the
You
pretty
know,
kind.
Most everybody who wants a quilt, they want a certain size, a certain color, and a certain pattern, and so this is just scraps.
How long did this take you?
Oh, probably about a month. I don't work too hard.
It is beautiful. I'm gonna try to fold it back the way you had it. Did I do right?
That's fine.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
We got 7 Dr. Peppers. You know, it's nice to see places like this still in operation in the 21st century, where you can stop in, enjoy the company of people like Miss Jackson, have a Dublin Dr. Pepper, and head on down the road to Hyco.
Hyco, Texas is considered by many to be the next up-and-coming tourist and shopping destination for Central Texas and the northern Texas Hill Country. Touted in the media as the next Fredericksburg, Hyco is quickly becoming a spot on the Texas map for those wanting to escape from the city and experience life in small-town Texas.
There are a host of shops and businesses that have received national acclaim, as well as a historic downtown shopping district that is known throughout Texas for its unique charm.
Before we visit the Billy the Kid Museum and check in on this local legend, we felt it was time to try the famous Coffee Cup family restaurant near downtown.
We're at the world famous Coffee Cup Cafe here in Hyco, Texas. Home of chicken fried steak, cream pie, favorite of Jody Dean's, and Southern Living magazine.
Show me the pastry.
The Coffee Cup family restaurant is a Central Texas landmark. Located at the junction of Highway 6 and 281 in Hyco, the Coffee Cup's a world-famous stopping point for locals and travelers alike.
Powder coat over the chrome.
How many bikes you have before this one?
7 or 8.
7 or 8? Yeah. You been riding?
I started riding in 1967.
We gotta try to keep up with these Harley Davidsons.
You have more than just the bond on the road of the motorcycles. Tell us about your other
What
bond.
got us started was the Marines. Okay, we kind of get together to help us each other as far as fellowship, and then other Marines. And like Jim's wife is with the Dallas-Fort Worth Marines family. And like I said, Marines come first, and then we get together with different bikes. And as you can tell, there's many different brands. It's not just Harley exclusive or Honda exclusive. But yeah, putting up with each other, good and bad, and just enjoying each other's fellowship and riding together like today. Rain or shine, we've been out in the bad weather and the good weather, and stopping and helping each other out. And just the camaraderie of the Marine Corps, that's what we share first. And then secondly, just it kind of all falls into place. But just enjoy the fellowship and the company of each other, and helping each other out, and just having a good time.
Well, when you start one brotherhood, it just doesn't stop, does it?
That's it.
Hey, Jody already gone in. Has he already eaten some pie?
He is.
That guy.
Watch the correct way to eat one of these. Baking is the specialty at the Coffee Cup. Donuts and breads are customer favorites, but it's the pies that get the most talk. And whichever pie you order, you will be back for more. And now, a Texas two-wheeling restaurant review of the Coffee Cup in Hico, Texas.
After stuffing ourselves with pie at the Coffee Cup, we headed over to the Billy the Kid Museum.
The Billy the Kid and Frontier Day celebration in Hico is held on April 5th every year and features arts, crafts, a quilt show, gunfighters, live music, and much more. Now, one of the more unusual claims they make here in Hico, Texas, is that Billy the Kid actually survived that shootout with Pat Garrett in New Mexico, and he moved here to live and die as a man named Ollie Brushy Bill Roberts.
And of course, the folks in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, don't really like that claim, since they claim to have the real body of Billy the Kid laying there, and we're talking tourist dollars here. What do you think?
Now, according to Hico legend, Billy the Kid was not killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett. Rather, he died of a heart attack en route to the Hico post office at the age of 90.
We just say Pat Garrett killed the wrong person, wounded Billy, and he lived to be an old man. But everything happened out there, as far as his legend goes.
No matter how Ollie L. Brushy Bill Roberts, alias William Bonney, also known as Billy the Kid, died, his legend lives on, and his museum features a whole lot of memorabilia. Well, in 1950, an El Paso reporter recorded an interview with a woman named Mrs. Mardel Abels, who was quoted to say that she had seen and talked to Billy the Kid the day before. She went on to say that he was living under the alias of Ollie Roberts, nicknamed Brushy Bill.
Well, actually, I think he was here in '33 and was here for a short time, then left, and then came back in 1944 about. Moved back and forth between Hico and Hamilton. The old man had the same bullet and knife wound scars in his body in the same place that Billy was purported to have had in 1881, plus a few more that he was able to explain. He could also, at the age of 88 to 90, lay his thumb back, which was double jointed, and his hand then became smaller than his wrist, and he could still pull himself hands out of handcuffs. And if you read about him, he was always shackled when he either walked or rode in a wagon, but he was always shackled. They didn't handcuff him. And when he was in jail in Fort Sumner, when Ollinger and Bell were killed, he was shackled. In the newspaper in New Mexico, Sutterwald stated the only thing this old man had going for him was the fact that he stated 50 years ago that when he shot at Bell down that stairwell, the only way he was on his stomach because he tripped. And when they did the rod trajectories to see what angles the bullets went in down the stairwell, the person had to have been on their stomach when they shot down it.
Well, that began one of the great mysteries of the American West. Could that infamous man, thought to be one of the worst of all outlaws, sworn dead and buried since 1881, actually have survived till 1950? Or was it the start of one of the biggest hoaxes in Texas history?
Because they have no body in New Mexico. It either washed away when they had the flood. I think it was either 1904 or 1944. Not all of them, but most of them were washed up and or away down the Pecos when it overflowed. Military come in and dug up the rest of the bodies and moved him to Fort Sumner, and he's either in an unmarked grave in Lincoln or he washed down the Pecos and into the Gulf.
The story caused a great deal of denial and controversy, even though in 1955 it would have been easy to prove or disprove, as some of the key players were still alive.
So they had no one to compare DNA with, to compare to the man in Hamilton. And what New Mexico plans to use for DNA, should they get permission to dig up Catherine Antrim, is a bench that's been in a chicken house in Armagardo, New Mexico for over 50 years. And that's what they plan to use. And the man that History Channel hired to do that was Dr. Henry Lee of O.J. Simpson fame. He says there's 2 sets of human blood. And there was a lot, and then this is the bench they claimed that they laid Billy on when they killed him back in 1881. My personal opinion is it's going to match Catherine Antrim if they dig her up, irregardless of what your experts have said. And there have been 4 across the United States who specialize in blood DNA that are forensic people who said that it will not work. 1, because the blood's too old. And 2, it's been in a chicken house for 50 years since contaminated, and blood after 50 years starts to break down.
Contemporary writers and historians alike have dismissed it out of hand or ignored it completely.
If the old man was not Billy, he rode with him during that time because he knew only things that only historians knew. And he had to have been there at that time in order to, because the average person didn't know him, and it wasn't something he could have read in a book.
Is this legend true or not? I guess we'll never know.
And even if the controversy hasn't been put to rest, Brushy Bill has been. Now it's back to Glen Rose and more of the beautiful northern Texas hill country in towns like Iredell, Morgan, Brazos Point, and Walnut Springs. Finally, back here in Glen Rose is a wonderful place just off 67 called Tres Rios, and in back, a restaurant you won't believe called Taylor's Turn and Burn.
Well, the restaurant was built by Taylor Simpson's mom and dad. Well, not literally. They had it built for her, and then they themed it after her barrel racing success.
It's a really cool and interesting story. Taylor Simpson is only 12 years old, and she's already a national finalist in barrel racing. Let's take a look. You would not know it to look at her. She appears to be an average 12-year-old girl, but Taylor Simpson is no average 12-year-old. She rides, not a motorcycle like me, but horses in barrel racing. In fact, she is a national finalist. How'd you get started in barrel racing?
Well, my dad's whole side of the family has been doing stuff with horses, and the main thing that they've done is barrel racing, so that's how I got it.
What's the most exciting part of barrel racing?
Well, the most exciting part is when you come out of the alleyway after your run is finished, and you know if you had a good run and you did what you came in there to do. When I'm out there on my horses, going through my mind is doing good, having a nice clean pattern, and the speed will come. Just have straight lines and good barrels.
Now, when you're racing, how many barrels are there? Do you go around in
3.
what pattern?
You go around 3 barrels.
They're in a straight line?
No, they're like, there's one here, and there's the second barrel's here, and then there's one in the back.
Okay, so it's like a triangle.
Kinda, yeah.
All right, now tell me about your horse.
My horse is a racetrack horse. He's 11, and he did 350 yards on the track.
After their little girl's huge success in the arena, they decided to build a family eatery that could serve the folks at Tres Rios and the general public, and to share their daughter's success.
My mom said that it had to have something. It had to have Taylor's name in it. My dad said that it had to have something to do with barrel racing, so we just put those two together.
I can't tell you how there's no words to tell you how proud I am of her.
Barrel racing did not come easy for Taylor. When Taylor was 6 years old, she nearly died from injuries she received from a horse riding accident.
She was 6, and we were running in an arena that they don't have an alleyway from the barrel pattern into the warm-up arena to shut your horse down when you're coming out of your pattern. And the girls back there warming up were not paying attention to the person coming out. And at that time, she had just run the fastest pattern she had ever run. And she was trying to shut her horse down and running through the girls that were warming up. And one walked in front of her horse and he shot to the right, which shot her about 2 o'clock in the saddle. And she smashed her face into the steel I-beam as they went past it, and she spun a 360 and landed about 30 feet away, face down in the dirt, and she was lifeless when my husband got to her, and her nose was smashed flat, her skull was fractured from here to here, and teeth were all knocked loose.
Despite the near-death experience, she still rides today.
We just couldn't keep her off the horse after that, and we knew if she went through that and still wanted to ride, that it was what she was destined to do.
I get to tell my story, and it's really cool. I love to do it, and there's nothing really that can stop me.
For 3 years now, Turn and Burn has been very successful. They offer a great variety of food, from burgers, pizza, steak, and prime rib, but their specialty is lasagna.
It's home cooked, and it's really, really good.
My dad's family's from Sicily, so we have a great red sauce recipe, and everything's from scratch.
The atmosphere is great, and you can see all of the photos of Taylor in action. Taylor's not just the star of the restaurant, but she waits tables and cleans, and helps run the restaurant with her mother. She talks with the customers and makes them feel right at home.
She's a PR person, so she does a lot of visiting with customers more than anything, but she does help in the restaurant.
My future is to be a world champion at this sport, and I want to be a veterinarian too.
Thank you for the interview. You did a really good job. I'm gonna go check out the food.
Okay.
Taylor, thanks for letting us drop by to tell your story.
And thank you for watching this edition of Texas Two Wheeling. We hope you'll join us the next time.
And by the way, that was Brian Burns at the top of our show with his version of our theme song. Once again, before we go, one of Texas' top performing songwriters. Here's Brian Burns with the Texas Two Wheeling version of I've Been Everywhere.
I've traveled every road in this here land. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. I've crossed the deserts bare, man. Breathe the mountain air, man. Travel, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere. I've been to Waco, Hyco, Hondo, Navasota, Winsburg, Jacksboro, Hillsboro, Santa Rosa, Austin, Houston, Galveston, Texarkana, Frisco, Buffalo, Conroe, Corsicana, Goliad, Groesbeck, Glen Rose, Red Oak, Post Oak, Live Oak, Lone Oak, no joke. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. I've crossed the deserts bare, man. Breathe the mountain air, man. Wind blowing in my hair, man. I've been everywhere. I've been to Krugerville, Pflugerville, Van Horn, Val Verde, Bracketville, Bartonville, Beeville, Bull Verde, Bear Creek, Cedar Creek, Mill Creek, Mineola, Maypearl, Monaghan, Telephone, Tuscola, Redwater, Round Rock, Round Top, Round Lake, Sour Lake, South Lake, Spring Lake. For Pete's sake, I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. I've crossed the deserts bare, man. Breathe the mountain air, man. Drove my tires bare, man. I've been everywhere. I've been to Greenville, Gatesville, Gainesville, Alameda, Kerrville, Kellyville, Bastrop, Benavida, Somerville, Smithville, Stephenville, Prairie View, looking back Longview, Plainview, Adelaide, Justin Junction, Panorama, Pasadena, Angelina, Anna Rena. See what I mean? I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Cross the deserts bare, man. Breathe the mountain air, man. lots of wear and tear, man. I've been everywhere. Now let me see, I've been to Valley Mills, Pine Mills, Dime Box, Duncanville, New Home, New Hope, New Deal, Liberty Hill, Rockport, Rock Creek, Bridgeport, Brownwood, Cleveland, Comanche, Cut and Shoot, Cottonwood, Bayview, Bayside, Baytown, Bay City, Fall City, Center City, Bridge City, what a pity. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Cross the deserts bare, man. Breathe the mountain air, man. Travel, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere. Yeah, when it comes to traveling, Texas friends, I've been everywhere.